So why is market gardening important in the Vale? Firstly, it's a really integral part of the area's history. So from the mid-19th to the mid-20th century, many families in the area were involved in market gardening, and it was a really key local industry. So it's an important part of the economy too. It's also important at a national level, as the Vale of Evesham was one of the largest fruit and vegetable producing regions of the UK. So what exactly is market gardening? Market gardening is the growing of crops, a great mixture of crops. So typically a mix of fruit, vegetables, herbs and flowers to sell for profit. Whilst market gardens tend to look a bit like large allotments in the sense that they were densely packed with quite a wide range of crops, allotments are grown for your own consumption, whilst market gardens are grown for market. And that's a distinction that market gardeners are usually quite keen to make, that actually it's not for your own consumption, that's what an allotment is. And a market garden is for sale, it's to provide a living and an income. So this on the screen is not an exhaustive list, but it nicely illustrates the range of crops that were grown by market gardeners. The Vale is obviously really well known for growing plums and asparagus, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware. But as you can see, market gardeners grow everything really from gooseberries through to spring onions, parsley to wallflowers. So it really was quite a broad range. Market garden plots themselves tended to be quite long, narrow strips, about 1 to 2 acres in size. Full-time market gardeners typically had 5 to 6 acres in total that they looked after, and that was usually spread out over a couple of different plots, and they were traditionally worked by hand, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, was no mean feat to be looking after and digging over to 5 to 6 acres of land. You can see on the aerial photograph on the left-hand side, market gardening very heavily shaped the landscape. It turned the large arable and pasture fields into a patchwork of small and intensively worked strips. So it wasn't just the community around the Vale that is heavily shaped, it was the physical landscape itself. The produce grown in the Vale of Evesham reached tables right across the country. So up in the north, up to Aberdeen, down to Penzance in the south, over east to Aldeburgh, and then across to Wales and into Ireland as well. The main means of transport was the railways, as crops that were picked one day could get to a distant market by the next morning, whilst they were still super fresh. Although towards the end of the industry's heyday, lorry transport did begin to replace the railways. It's important as well to remember that market gardening wasn't just about the growers themselves. They were supported by a whole network of related trades around the Vale. So from basket makers to local blacksmiths who made the very specialist tools, such as asparagus knives and sprout net holders, which are in the photograph on the slide, but to auctioneers, transport companies, and there were several jam and canning factories that set up in the Vale as well, which ensured that any surplus didn't go to waste. From around the 1960s, market gardening started to become less profitable and the industry gradually declined. Today, there are almost no traditional market gardeners left in the Vale, despite the fact that all communities used to want to be involved in market gardening. And the physical evidence, as you can see quite vividly in that photograph, along with the knowledge and the local memories, are starting to disappear. So this is where the Market Gardening Heritage Project comes in. There was quite an urgent need to record this heritage before it was all lost to the mists of time. Very little about market gardening within the Vale has been written down and is in county archives. So a project was set up, which was made possible by funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund and Historic England. It's been a partnership between a number of local and county-wide organisations, so as you can see from the logos on the slide. We started in autumn 2018 and we're due to finish this spring, so we're starting to come towards the end of the project now. The project had a couple of strands to it. The first was the people side. As part of the project, we've recorded local memories, collected copies of historic photographs, all those kind of intangible things that mean a lot to people, but that have never really been written down and properly recorded. The other strand focused on the building side, market gardeners' hovels, which I'll explain a bit more about in a minute. So this element involved volunteer-led survey of surviving buildings being recorded, and 3 being restored as public heritage sites. So alongside all this recording work, there have been a number of public events, and we're due to hold an exhibition at the end of the project, although the format of that's kind of slightly COVID dependent and will probably be online. So I just mentioned the term hovel. I'm sure some of you will have come across this already. Within the Vale of Evesham, the term hovel is used to mean a small building used by a market gardener. There isn't really a set definition for what a hovel is. So if you ask someone to describe what they think is a hovel, you tend to get a slightly different answer to what the person before and the person after says. In essence, though, they're a structure built by market gardeners on the end of a piece of market garden ground. They're primarily there to store equipment to provide shelter from the weather. They're most often built of wood and corrugated metal to the market gardener's own design, so they have a lot of character as they're all individually unique. There are some, though, that are brick built that had chimneys, and those ones tended to be used a little bit more for accommodation for temporary workers. So there is quite a wide variety of different market gardening hovels. Just to show you briefly, I mentioned earlier that there's 3 hovels being restored by the project. So these are all on the slide there. So the bottom 2 are in North Littleton, and the top one is in Cleve Prior. The Cleve Prior hovel was abandoned quite suddenly in the early 1990s when the market gardener who'd been using that land very suddenly fell ill. So it's been preserved as a total time capsule from the day he left, and it had all sorts inside it, from tools to his reading book and glasses on the side, and loads of tins of food that he had in there. So that really has been a bit of a treasure trove. Those 3 sites will be open to the public, including schools, from around Easter time when there'll be information panels arriving. Obviously, any outdoor activities at the moment are also kind of depending on how things go. But to move on to the school pack itself, the school resource pack is digital and is being hosted on our Explore the Past website. There are no plans at the moment to have a print version. So unless we receive requests to do so, it will stay purely as a digital pack. And hopefully you'll see in a minute as well about it. It's been designed to be digital. The design of it has also been created to be as flexible as possible, so that it can be used for as many age groups and subjects as possible, as well as being easy to adapt to suit different teaching styles. So to help with this, the pack's been split into 2 parts. The first part, which we've termed Records from the Past, is a pool of resources. So it's split up into a series of topic-based web pages that are filled with old photographs, oral history clips, written records, and accompanying explanations. The second part is the teachers section, which contains supporting documents. I'm going to now go into the website itself to actually go through, because it's easier to go through in a live demonstration than in static screenshots. You just have to bear with me for a minute whilst I close this down and get the web page open. So you hopefully can all see the web page now. Seeing some nods, so that's encouraging. So this is the school pack, the digital pack, and as I mentioned, it's split into these 2 sections. So if I go into the records from the past first, just move my so as you can see, this has got a series of, these are all the topic-based pages. Some of them are kind of chronological and overview ones, so what is an overview of what market gardening is, why it started, the people involved, how things got to market, where they were sold, all those related trades, the blacksmiths, the basket makers, the canning factories. World War I and World War II got a joint page together, and then about change and decline of the industry and some explore further resources. So these together form a pool of resources that can either be explored directly by pupils or used by yourselves as a resource bank for creating your own activities and lessons. So if we go into one of the pages just to illustrate, I'm not going to go through all of the pages now because that would probably get a little bit more monotonous, but just to show you what they're like, they're generally subdivided into a series of drop-down boxes to make it easier to navigate through the content. And this is the mixture of resources they contain. So this one's got an oral history clip in there. The audio clips have been kept fairly short, so they're all under 2 minutes. Quite a lot of them are under a minute as well. So they're very focused on a specific topic. There's a lot of images in here as well. There's some historic photographs. There are also images of historic records themselves. Most of the images are in scrolling image kind of carousels of images, which you can move through with the side arrows. When necessary, we've put explanations up to accompany historic records, although we've usually put a copy of the original up as well, so that you have both options. So this is a book of crop sales from the early 20th century. The handwriting is not the easiest to read, and none of the columns are labelled, which makes it quite hard to interpret. So if you carry on scrolling, there's generally then an explanation that actually goes through what the records are and explains a bit more about them. There are also variously at various points throughout here documents that you can click on that are actually PDFs that will open up that can be downloaded or just looked at online, so you can zoom in and actually see more detail. So this one's crops that were grown over different seasons in the early part of the 20th century. As you can see, that amount of detail wouldn't really come from the image scrolling. So there are also a few interactive things throughout the pages as well. So this one's a view of an inside of a market gardener's hovel, and all the objects have been labelled, so if you click on something you get an explanation. So there's a real mix in there, and it has been designed to be written to be kind of age appropriate, so that pupils, if you want to, can explore it themselves. So market gardening is obviously an ideal local history topic, and you should be able to find everything you need within the pages if you're wanting to teach it as a local history study. So including within the Explore Further, further resources page, there's also a list of places to start if your class wants to research a particular topic or a local area in more depth. However, market gardening does also have links to quite a wide range of topics, from exploring landscape change to habitats, through to healthy eating, art, as we'll hear about in a minute, design and creative writing. So to enable the resources within that records from the past, that resource pool, to be used in the broadest possible way, we haven't created any set activities or lesson plans. Instead, within the teachers section, we've put a variety of supporting materials. So if we go into the teachers section, there's an overview at the beginning, which just explains how the pack's laid out. There are then another series of drop-down boxes. The key resources are in using this pack. And there's two of them. The first one is the teacher's notes. I should check as well, are these appearing on the share when I open up a document? Okay, that's good. So this is a background summary really of market gardening, so that you don't have to go through all the web pages to gather an understanding of what market gardening is and what happened. This is all condensed into one document. And at the end of each section, there's a list of the resources available and a corresponding record from the past page as well. So those headings are all kind of the same as in records from the past. The other key document is the curriculum links. So this is divided into subjects. So if we pick just the science one, for example, and it highlights areas of the Key Stage 2 to 3 curriculum that can be linked to market gardening. The resources can obviously be used by any key stage. We have focused particularly for the curriculum links document on Key Stage 2 to 3. As that's the age group, we have aimed the records from the past pages at kind of pupil self-exploration. We've included activity suggestions and a note of the available resources alongside the areas of the curriculum that we think it links to. They're there for those who are seeking inspiration, but there are obviously other activities that can be done and other ways of teaching these areas than we've included in the document. So to go back to the teachers section, there are also other kind of more focused resources within here. So there are a couple of overview materials as well. There'll be an introductory PowerPoint for going through with the class, should you choose to use that, a glossary of market gardening terms, some templates for a particular activity that's mentioned in the curriculum links document, which is about writing letters from today to the past and vice versa. They draw on a pool of letters that were written by school children in 1933. Children in Badsey and in Pershore were asked to write about their life in the market gardening region of the Vale of Evesham, which is quite an incredible resource, and so they draw on that. And then there is also a series of kind of more STEM subject-based resources, which again link to activities that are mentioned in the curriculum links document. And then finally, there's a bit of information about if you're interested in visiting any of the 3 restored hovels, particularly the Cleve Prior site. There's the Cleve Prior Heritage Trust, who own that site, already run a series of outdoor activities. They've got a pond dipping platform and various other things there, so there's details about that in that section. So that's a very brief overview of PAC's layout, but I hope it gives you an idea of how it can be used and the types of resources that it contains. Finally, and so just before I finish, I wanted to point out that the resource pack can be enhanced and it can be altered if there are aspects that, when it's used in practice, turn out to not be so helpful, such as if the formats resources are available and could do with being in a different format, that type of thing. So it's not fixed in stone, things can be changed. So thank you very much for listening. I'll hand over to Eleanor now, who's going to talk about the Plum Festival art competition. And if you do have any questions about this, we'll save them for the Q&A session at the end. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll just put my PowerPoint up when Nina's has gone down. Hold on. Okay, can someone give me a thumbs up? Is that on the screen for you? Thank you, Anita. Okay. Yes, so as I said earlier, I'm just going to provide you with a little bit of background on the Plum Festival, and then I'm going to introduce our art competition and explain how you can get involved with that. Please excuse me looking down at my notes all the time as well. So as Nina emphasised, market gardening was the predominant industry in the Vale of Evesham from the mid-19th to the early 20th century, and Pershore, as you can probably guess, was famous for its plums. So in 1827, a man called George Crook, who was a publican of the Butcher's Arms in Church Street, which for those of you who know Pershore is where the library is located now, he discovered the Pershore yellow egg plum simply by chance when he was out walking in Tiddesley Wood. Tiddesley Wood is a beautiful area of about 80 hectares of ancient woodland to the west of Pershore. Now, George Crook's son Thomas forced the growing of that variety, and it became widespread throughout the Pershore district by 1833. The Pershore purple plum was then created by Walter Martin of Drake's Broughton in 1877. The history of plums in Pershore is extensive and certainly something that you can find out more about if you're interested in plums as inspiration for your artwork. For example, during the First World War, Pershore fruit and plums were transported by train throughout the country and to the front lines. There was even a steam train called the Pershore plum. So these supplies were vital as a result of food shortages, and certainly this area made a huge contribution to the war effort. There are some incredible stories, the hugely diverse wartime workforce out there. So there's many men signed up to fight, women, students from the University of Birmingham, prisoners of war even, all helped with local harvests during that period. So there are some fantastic moments in history that you could draw upon for inspiration. And since those historic occasions, the town has been synonymous with plums. We have great pride in that fruit, and we now hold the month-long Plum Festival in August each year. And the festival itself has become a hugely popular tourist event in the local area. Okay, so those of you who have visited the Plum Festival before will be aware of what we offer, from tower tours of Pershore Abbey to a classic car show on the Abbey Park, Plum Bikeaway, live music throughout the month, farmers market, trade stalls from a plethora of local businesses, and so much more. We provide a great range of musical and artistic entertainment. However, I wanted to create something that really targeted youth engagement, and particularly generating a link between art and local heritage. And I also wanted that to be something that the local education community and hopefully everyone can keep getting involved with. So we really want to build those links and fully develop those relationships in the coming years. Therefore, we would like art competition entrants this year to use the Market Gardening Heritage Project as their inspiration. So as Nina explained, I really would encourage you to use whichever resources you feel you can develop into a great lesson. So that might mean you complete a study of local produce, such as plums, create work in the style of a particular artist. Children could create sketches inspired by the photographs of the hovels. And again, I'd really encourage you, if you can get out to visit some of those key sites later in the year, such as those restored hovel sites, please do so. Children could also speak to their own relatives whose experiences of market gardening might inspire a creative response. We're just excited to see the variety of work that gets submitted in response to the theme. So I'll explain how you can do that in just a moment. The competition, let me just move on. The competition is going to be judged independently by a small panel of judges. And that panel will be headed by local artist Michael Amies. Michael will be joined by fellow local artist Mr. C, who you might be aware has been creating installation artworks depicting various animals on cling film as part of a trail around Pershore. He's been nicknamed Pershore's answer to Banksy, so we're really excited to have him on board. There will be a separate competition category for each key stage, and we will be offering prizes to the individual winner for each stage. That individual winner's school will then also be awarded a school bundle prize, and all of those prizes will comprise art supplies, and the bundle prize will include enough art supplies for a class of 30 children. And it is our hope as well that we'll be able to secure some local artists to come into those winning schools to lead some workshops with the children using the materials that have been supplied. A selection of winning and highly commended entries will then also be exhibited at Pershore Town Hall in August. We intend to use that event to exhibit some of the materials collected by Nina and her team as well. So it'll be a great celebration of the huge efforts of her team, as well as everyone who's entered that competition. It is our hope that that event will still go ahead in person, and indeed if it does, the venue will be made COVID secure, but if it can't go ahead, we will of course be making alternative provision online. Okay. So I'm going to, as you can see, display some key dates for you now. All of this information is available on our website, and if you have any questions, please either let us know at the end of this session, or you can send us an email. Another member of our committee, Emma, who I think is on this call, will be more than happy to help you out with those. Okay, so you can enter the competition anytime from now. So if you want to get your entries completed and want to send them in, that's absolutely fine. And I'll explain how you do that in just a moment. The deadline for entries is Wednesday, the 2nd of June. We'll then endeavour to award all those prizes before the end of the school year in July. The winning and commended entries will obviously then go onto exhibition at Pershore Town Hall, and that will be between Saturday the 14th and Saturday the 21st of August. Our website and our email address are on the bottom of the screen there for you if you want to just note those down, but it's all fairly easily accessible if you just Google the Plum Festival and art competition, but that's there for you as well. The full terms and conditions of entry are available on the website, and I would advise you to have a read of those prior to starting any work on your entries. I'm going to summarise a few of the key requirements for you now though. Okay, so the competition is open to schools and colleges in the Wychavon district only. Of course, anyone else can continue to access those wonderful resources created by Nina if they wish to do so. Entries can be submitted on paper or in digital form. So paper entries must be no bigger than A3, please. However, your students can use whatever materials they want to on that paper. So paint, crayon, stencil, whatever you've got, whatever style you want to work in is absolutely fine, just no bigger than A3, please. If you want your children to use a digital program to create their artwork, that's also absolutely fine. Please just make sure that entries are submitted in a digital image file format, such as JPEG, so that they can be exhibited via projection if that event at the town hall goes ahead as planned, and obviously so that they can be uploaded if we do a virtual event instead. There are whole school and independent entry forms on our website. Please fill those in and send them with your entries. If you're entering multiple students' work, you can use the whole school entry form. Students can also enter independently. So for example, if you decide not to set this as a lesson or a homework, but you simply want to make parents aware that the competition's running, that's absolutely fine. Children can get involved that way. I would just ask that children only enter the competition once, please. If a child enters via their school, they can't also enter independently. That's simply because the child's respective school will still be eligible for that first place bundle prize, even if they've entered independently. So we just want to have that degree of fairness there with people not having multiple entries. Okay, the terms and conditions on the website include the address for the paper entries to be sent to. We also intend to provide an in-person drop-off location for those entries. However, due to the nature of obviously ongoing COVID restrictions, we can't offer that at present. So please check our website regularly for updates, and we will let you know as soon as we're able to about that. So if you do get started and you've got somewhere to store all those entries and you want to hang on to them to save yourself some postage, then that's absolutely fine. We should be able to get that up and running, fingers crossed for you. Okay. Digital entries can be attached in an email, and again, information on how to go about doing that is all on those terms and conditions which can be found on the website. Unfortunately, we will not be able to return any artwork after the competition. If you do want to collect your school's artwork from Pershore Civic Centre, that's where we're aiming to store those entries for a limited number of weeks following the judging of the competition. And again, we will post updates on our website a little bit closer to the time to let you know how that's going to happen, how you can go about coming in and collecting those artworks. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much once again for your attendance, and I really hope this event has been informative. On behalf of everyone at Pershore Plum Festival, we're just incredibly excited to see the children's entries starting to arrive and seeing what they're producing in response to that theme and in response to Nina's back. I believe we're going to take some questions now, so I'll hand back over to Nina and Anita, who are going to chair that.